It's estimated that over 22 million people have seen this near viral video. Have you? Well, I've just updated it with the 5 critical triggers that could save your family from disaster, so you need to see this right now. Let's face it, if you're watching this video, then you're probably the undeclared hero in your household. In other words, if the it hits the fan, your family will look to you to provide safety and comfort. So let me ask you, do you have the 37 items sold out after a crisis? If you don't, you may be too late. How will you explain to your loved ones that you didn't take these simple steps and you don't have the food and other critical items needed to survive? And don't play the "it won't happen here" card. That's total BS. We've seen how weather's getting crazier and the world is becoming less stable. It won't take much to set off the mobs of people emptying the store shelves of the critical items your family will need. But you're not going to see this reported on CNN, NBC, or even Fox News. This is breaking news that you're only going to get here, so listen closely. At the 2-minute mark of this video, you will find out exactly how deep the conspiracy goes. Here's a hint. It's a lot deeper than most people think. So here it is. Underground U.S. disaster experts have uncovered 5 unstoppable triggers pushing America to the brink of disaster. This confirms there's a perfect storm of disasters brewing fast. Trigger number 1. It's easier than ever for rogue terrorists, drug cartels, and foreign threats to cross our borders. The Boston Marathon bombing is a great example of just how exposed we are. Trigger number 2. Tensions with North Korea could boil into a nuclear bloodbath at any moment, and Iran isn't far behind. Negotiating with psychopathic dictators bent on hurting U.S. citizens is a no-win situation. Eventually, something's got to give. Trigger number 3. Government control and civil unrest. As U.S. citizens, we're losing our rights and privacy faster than any other time in history. Gun legislation, the Patriot Act, talk of controlling the internet. The government is cramping down on our civil liberties at an unprecedented rate. When I recently surveyed my top 100,000 customers, I wasn't surprised to see government control and civil unrest as the number one fear. The growing fear of civil unrest makes sense. We've seen what happens in Europe when you take away free stuff like entitlement services from the people. And if this is finally the year the U.S. starts to see massive food inflation and food shortages, you can bet there will be anger in the streets. Civil unrest could be the new norm. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We'll get into the other 2 triggers in a second. See, every day more and more concerned patriots are picking up on what's going on around us. You've probably known for a long time something big was coming. Well, you're not the only one. Out of the 22 million people who have already watched this video, most have started prepping for the disaster. It's common sense. As America wakes up, prepping is becoming the norm. Network news stations talk about prepping, and FEMA has ad campaigns on stocking food, water, and batteries, not to mention doomsday preppers and Revolution or primetime TV shows. I see survival gear in Sharper Image stores, Target, and many other places. And of course, you can always buy your emergency food buckets at Costco. But here's the problem. Most people are spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on the wrong things. There are actually just 37 critical food items you need to survive any disaster. And it's urgent you find out what those 37 items are now. Because once a disaster hits, it'll be too late to get them. Grocery stores carry less than a 3 to 4 day supply of food, and this is gone in just minutes when the mobs of unprepared people rush to the stores at just the hint of a pending crisis. Now, in case you don't know me, my name is Damian Campbell, and over the past 3 years, my sole mission has been to prepare America to survive this perfect storm of disasters. It started out with sharing this stockpiling blueprint with close friends here in Colorado, but the demand for my list of the 37 critical items seemed to spread like wildfire. Once word got out, thousands of people per week all across the U.S. were claiming their copy of the stockpiling blueprint. Now we have customers in over 40 different countries. Oddly enough, this has gotten a lot of media attention too. My call to arms has been seen on stations like Glenn Beck, Newsmax, Town Hall, Personal Liberty, and Fox News, to name a few. The news spread quickly, and as of today, over 220,000 people have received a list of 37 critical items to hoard. Now it's your turn to get your hands on it. And you'll get the most updated list, version 4.2. After 3 years, I've gone back and updated this list of 37 crucial items, and from the feedback I'm getting, this is the best version of this blueprint yet. Love that someone out there is actually providing true facts regarding what we face here in this country and how I can make sure my family survives. Thank you, Damien, writes Brenda F. This is what you need to know before the it hits the fan, Randall G. And I thought it was excellent. I'm a 23-year-old disaster services volunteer for the American Red Cross and have dealt with many horrific disasters. Written by Valerie C. And the timing couldn't be better. Not only is our country facing terror threats, war with Korea, and a civil liberty lockdown, it's got two more near unstoppable crisis triggers looming. The fourth trigger is our own sun. The sun has spawned some powerful solar flares, rocketing toward the Earth at more than 600 miles per second. And NASA predicts it's less than 14.7 turns away from launching an unstoppable coronal mass ejection that can send billions of tons of solar particles hurtling straight toward the Earth, affecting satellites and even damaging our electrical grid. Imagine living with no electricity for a few months. And the fifth and final trigger is one the entire world has noticed. Mother Nature has gone haywire. Mutant superstorms and hurricanes such as Irene and Sandy have smashed through cities, turning its residents into mobs of powerless people. Then you have droughts and rapid spreading fires that have raged across the U.S., and flooding has destroyed countless homes and even families. I hate to say this, but you haven't seen anything yet. Experts are saying this is just the beginning, and we can expect more weather disasters with greater intensity going forward. Now, these 5 triggers aren't the only threats America is facing. They're just the more well-known. We don't have time to get into the mountain of possible disasters, aging infrastructure, debt default, and cyber attacks that could hit. What you've got to understand is with one tiny push, these seemingly unrelated catastrophic events could align and leave U.S. citizens powerless to defend themselves. But it's not just America. The entire world would be in a dangerous position. We could be on the brink of a crisis that would dwarf anything we've seen in the past 100 years. Washington's picking up on this too. The government hasn't said a word, but just look at what they've reportedly been doing. The Department of Homeland Security is stockpiling enough bullets to fight the Iraq War for 23 years. But DHS made this purchase for domestic purposes. What in the world do they need all that ammo for? FEMA put in an order for 420 million emergency food meals, which is a 7,000% increase over their normal numbers. More on this coming up next. Local law enforcement agencies are stocking up on more and more tactical equipment like armored troop carriers, mini-tanks, and grenade launchers. The state of Georgia is estimated to have $200 million worth of military surplus. But in the middle of these uncertain times, most people are actually stocking up on the wrong survival items. That means thousands of dollars spent, but they still don't have what they need. The truth is, whatever all the fear peddlers, big agencies, and conspiracy buffs try to say, there are really only 37 critical food items you need, and you must hoard these items now. With them, you can securely survive the coming disaster. But now that you know the dangers and triggers that could cause this crippling chain reaction, it's time to step up. Your family needs a hero, and your wife, kids, and grandkids are going to look to you to fill that role. You can't dodge it, ignore it, or pass it off. This is your job. You've got to get started right now, or it could be too late. Just ask the men in these recent disasters who dropped the ball or thought nothing is going to happen. In Hurricane Sandy's aftermath, women and children were dumpster diving for food. Don't be a father lurking in the shadow and shame. In Hurricane Katrina, looters ran wild, shops and stores shut down. Families were either forced to mooch off neighbors, evacuate to FEMA camps, or go hungry. What's going to happen to your family? You can either use these 37 items to keep your family safe, secure, and happy, or wait until store shelves are stripped bare, your family is hungry and afraid, and try to explain why you just couldn't get around to grabbing 37 simple items, even though 220,000 Americans already have. Now, we've all seen how badly FEMA handles disasters. Personally, I don't want a handout from anyone, and I certainly don't want to rely on a FEMA relief camp. So if you decide you're going to take matters into your own hands and get what your family needs to survive, I'm happy to help. To get you started, here are 6 must-know survival food tips. First off, you're killing your family if you're counting on a garage full of MREs or other survival food to get you through a disaster. And second, why the food your wife normally buys is almost perfect, but the thing she hasn't thought to buy is crucial. This caught me off guard when I found out. Third, and super important, is why your food is worthless if you buy the wrong packaging. Trust me, there's nothing more demoralizing than finding your carefully packed food crawling with maggots and realizing your family is going to go hungry. And fourth, how to pack your food like a Special Forces soldier so your family will have the basics even if you have to run. Fifth, how to tell if you're going to make your family sick by eating expired food, or if it'll be just as good as the day it was packaged. By the way, this is extremely important for long-term disasters like a food crisis. And oddly enough, sixth, why this brand of alcohol should be at the top of your list even if you don't drink. See, right now people look down on those of us who take the obvious dangers seriously and are getting ready. Sometimes our neighbors or even family say we're crazy or kooky. But here's what I think. People may say we're nuts now, but we'll see who was right when they're asking us for help. We won't even say I told you so. See, there'll be no way to buy any of these critical items after a disaster. You know that, and I know that. But spoiled, rotten Americans think they can snap their fingers and get whatever they want. The fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter how rich, popular, or politically correct you are. When people are starving and panicking, you're not going to get what you need without a fight. That's why you must get these 37 crucial food items before the panic. And it's also why we're going to be the people on top of the game when crisis hits. See, with these 37 items, you'll be able to be a community leader, ready to protect and provide for your fellow Americans, setting the example for your close friends and family. These 37 items are so important, you'll become the disaster go-to guy. And the great thing is, these 37 items won't break the bank. Really, the only way to screw this up is to wait. If you don't have them in advance, you're sunk. The fact of the matter is, when disaster hits, many stores will close, and coddled Americans will panic. But for some strange reason, people try to pretend like nothing is going to happen, or there's no reason to freak out. And they're the first ones to run to the store and strip the shelves bare just as soon as the news even mentions crazy weather. Imagine if they announce something like 9/11 again. How do you think they're going to act when their favorite grocery store has its windows smashed and nothing left on the shelves? You know exactly what they'll do. Start a panic and loot every store around. But more on that in a second. What I can't understand is why they're ignoring the evidence. Weird conspiracy theories aren't my cup of tea, but the factual evidence here is different. It's obvious you need these 37 critical food items now. Just take a look at these recent news bulletins. Researcher Kent Arnsberger recently exposed grocery stores for their poor planning. They might carry 3 to 4 days worth of food. That's gone in mere hours or even minutes during a crisis, so you won't be able to get your hands on things your family needs to live unless you have them in advance. And the Mayo Clinic recommends you drink about 2 liters of water every day. How much water would you have if, God forbid, terrorists poisoned our water supply or nuclear fallout made rainwater undrinkable? And worst of all, Fox News reports lack of acreage in the U.S. will usher in a significant food shortage. Not to mention the fact Off-the-Grid News reported the U.S. government recently put in an order for a 10-day supply of food for 14 million people. That means 420 million emergency meals. Maybe that doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you compare it to the 6 million meals normally on hand, it brings up a disturbing question. As an observant American, I have to ask the question you're probably thinking. Why the sudden 7,000% increase? When you add all that up, how people can't see the obvious truth is beyond me. But the part that really bugs me is, when a disaster strikes, who do you think all these clueless freeloaders are going to try and come to? You guessed it. You and your family who were wise enough to stock up on the necessities before the crisis. There's no way to deny that food prices have been skyrocketing, which makes it even more important to buy these 37 critical items before the prices go even higher. And if you think food is expensive now, imagine what it'll be like when stores shut down and farms can't feed their livestock. After all, when your family is hungry and you know you can't restock anytime soon, would you sell even a scrap of food? Heck no. And if you were going to sell some of your precious food, how much would you charge? Would you take credit? That food would be worth its weight in gold, literally. That means if your family is less than rich or even in some debt right now, you need to buy these 37 essential food items while you still can. But this isn't some doomsday prediction. Take a look at what happened in Germany when hyperinflation hit. In 1923, the Weimar Republic was hammered by hyperinflation in record time. A pound of meat that cost 36 marks less than a year before jumped to 36 billion marks practically overnight, and the U.S. is on the same crash course. But here's some good news. These 37 food items are specifically for middle-class Americans who are going through hard times financially. This may sound harsh, but rich people don't need my help. These 37 items are for Americans who won't make it without the basics and can't spend a fortune trying to survive when disaster hits. That's why instead of just getting a generic list, you'll get the info on where to get the top 3 crucial items even if you're barely making ends meet and are neck deep in debt. Along with the top items that are just as good as name brand but a fraction of the cost. In fact, a lot of the big companies try to hide these trade names to keep you spending. Not to mention how to use items hiding in your cupboard to replace anything you might be missing. And most importantly, where to find the last couple of items if you get caught in a panicked mob. As you can see, this isn't a guide that sends you to the camping store to spend hundreds of dollars on dehydrated survival food. Besides, even if you can afford it, that stuff isn't a great long-term answer. Now, it doesn't matter if you're in debt or on a tight budget. You can afford to protect your family and get the most critical food and water items on the market. But you might think this sounds too good to be true. In fact, I've had people contact me accusing me of being some kind of scam artist or hustler. So I guess the real question is, why am I doing this? Some people will accuse me of trying to make a buck off my fellow Americans' back, and you know what? They're right, to a point. After all, I've done hard work researching, writing, and preparing these survival guides, and I expect to be paid for it. Fair is fair, and I'm not ashamed to say it. But the other piece is even more selfish. The hard truth is, if you're not with us, you're against us. Our country needs more Americans like you who are serious about preparing. Even with the ultra-prepared, there's no way we can support every single person